And my internship over the summer, basically I want to become a costume designer, is my end all goal. For theater and film, whichever will hire me first. It's the sort of job that flip-flops back and forth, you never quite know where you're going to be next. So over the summer, I was able to work with a former professor of mine from New Mexico, who's also a screenwriter, and happened to be directing a production that he'd written called The Refuge, which will hopefully be coming out within the next year. And so I worked with their costume designer as her assistant and ran around in circles 6 days a week, 14 hours a day, usually doing laundry out in the middle of the desert. There was one day, they actually ended up having to cancel shooting halfway through the day. We got out there at 6 in the morning, and by 9 o'clock it was 114 degrees, and we had no shade that day at all. So half the crew ended up in the hospital with heat stroke for the rest of the day. So that one didn't go so well. But you had up and down days. So we did the first week of shooting in the desert, but then the next week we got to be inside. And it was wonderful to see how much happier everyone was. And you know, it was only 80 maybe. It was amazing. So for about the first couple days of my internship, I was very, very frustrated with it and wasn't sure if I wanted to keep going with it. And so I just thought it would be better to come home and just find a normal job. Because I had never been on a film set before. I'd only done very small bits and wasn't really sure what was going to happen with any of it. And it turns out that my boss had never had an intern before, or any assistant of any kind, and she'd always been an assistant herself. And this was her first time really being in charge of the situation as well. So neither of us were exactly sure what we were doing or how to help each other out. And I just felt like I spent a lot of time chasing her around in circles, asking what I could do now, what I could do now, what I could do now, and never really getting much of an answer aside from doing more laundry. I definitely became an expert at all kinds of laundry over the summer. But after a while, I took that as a challenge, and I got horribly discouraged. And my friends kind of told me I was back where I was for high school, and they knew that I would get outrageously competitive. And they told me to take it as a challenge. And so I had to find ways to make myself useful and to be observant enough to tell what needed to be done before it needed to be done, and to be able to keep on top of things that my boss would otherwise forget because she was trying to keep track of more than what she was used to as well. So even when it came down to menial tasks like organizing her trunk, because we threw all of our costumes in her car and drove out to set every morning and we could never find it. And so it got to the point where by the time I left, people were not even looking to her as much as they were looking to me to figure out where things went or how to fix something or what we were supposed to be doing next. Because I had to really learn how to prioritize and schedule myself, especially with the constant going and going and going. Everyone always needed something, or someone would rip this. And there was a day when my boss was, she owns a coffee shop in the town that we were in as well, and so she had to go and work at the coffee shop. So I was the only one there in costumes for the day, and it was terrifying. Because everything was your fault. And the way that film departments work is that they always want to blame the next department up so that it's never your fault when the director comes to scream at someone. So it's always easy. Makeup's going to blame wardrobe, and wardrobe's going to blame props, and props is going to blame lighting, and it just has to go up the line. So you're always terrified that it's going to be you that gets stuck when they come to yell. And there was one morning in particular where I got up at 4 in the morning to do an iron-on for a basketball jersey for a scene that we had to shoot, and it was supposed to say "Hoopsters for Jesus," and I messed it up. I got one of the E's backwards, and we didn't have any spare E's, and I couldn't get it off. And it's when you describe it, it sounds so menial and so little. You think just go and get a new jersey and try it again. But there was absolutely we tried and drove in circles to Walmart's, and there was yelling and screaming. And my boss actually at one point just left. She was that upset. And all over the letter E, being backwards. But then by the time, this was all before 7 in the morning as well, and then by the time our actor gets there, who's supposed to be wearing it for the day, he walks in, and we hadn't figured out anything else. We had another plain jersey that we could put him in if he absolutely hated it. It was Chris McDonald, Shooter McGavin. It's his big part that everyone knows him for. And so he comes in, and my boss, Mary, kind of very hesitantly hands him the jersey to see what he thinks, and we're both just bracing ourselves for him to absolutely hate it and scream and yell, and for them to have to cancel a shooting for a few hours while we fixed it. And he loved it. And he wanted to know who would come up with the brilliant idea to put the E backwards. His character would love. And they went with it, and it became a big thing where everyone loved the fact that the E was backwards. And my boss hated me for the rest of the day. But it got down to little things like that, or I got to learn how to tailor extremely well in that we had one actress who flew in from LA. This was all done in New Mexico, and she flew in from LA. I got to meet her for about 10 minutes. Didn't have a measuring tape, didn't have pen and paper or anything like that. Just got to see her in like sweatpants and a t-shirt. She just gotten off an airplane. And then I got to see the suit that she was wearing. Apparently they do not sell size 0 suits in New Mexico. So we had to special order her business suit from LA as well. Apparently she didn't own any of her own. So we special ordered the suit out, and it still didn't fit her quite right. We knew that, but I hadn't been there to see her try it on. So my boss didn't know how to sew at all, and I do. So she handed me the suit and said, make this fit her. Well, I didn't get the chance to try it on her or measure her at all or anything of that sort. I just kind of had to guess and say, okay, well, there's the shoes that she's going to wear, and that's about how tall she looked and how thin she looked, and just guess. So while I did laundry that night, I had to take in her suit and pray that it fit, because there was no way I was going to have time to do it before we started shooting in the morning. And it turned out that it worked for her very well. And I did the same thing with one of our other actresses who actually hired me on now, Linda Hamilton, to be her personal tailor for however long she wants to keep me around, because she really liked how well I was able to just get a look for exactly how things were supposed to fit her. So even though there were many times when it seemed like everything was just veering on the brink of disaster, and you knew that if you just took one step the wrong way, it was all going to fall apart, and you knew you were going to get fired and sent home, it was going to be horrible. In the end, it worked out really, really nice, and so not only did I get a lot more insight into what I want to do, and I'm pretty convinced I still want to keep going for it as much work as it was. I loved the busyness of it, but not only did I get that experience, but I also was able to pick up a lot of other things on the side. I got offered a full-time job that I couldn't take because I wanted to finish school, but as a wardrobe assistant on The Bold and the Beautiful here in LA too. So it's those kind of things where it was a matter of meeting people and learning how to talk to people and figure out what they can do for you in exchange for what little things you can do for them. And how much those little things, like bringing people a cup of coffee now and then or holding their cigarettes for them, will really add up to getting you that really great job at the end of all of it.
First off, I'd like to thank the Weingart Foundation. I'd also like to thank Sally Cardenas, as well as the entire department, the internship department, for awarding us with such a glorious opportunity. My name is Justin Valero. I'm a double major in political science and religious studies. I'd also like to thank the Department of Consumer Affairs for providing one of the best environments for a student to grow and learn. I know I keep talking, I'm afraid that I'm going to get interrupted by a rapper. And lastly, I'd like to thank my professors and my advisors, Professor Fred Bergeson and Professor Rosemary Carbine. I have to tip my hat off to Rosemary Carbine for her never-ending concern and dedication to my academic career here at Whittier College. She's always been a wonderful professor, a wise advisor, and a dear friend. Okay, now that I'm over with thanking everyone, now why am I up here saying this? Well, everyone's was completely invaluable through this process. The Professional Opportunities Program, like the rest of Whittier College, was able to integrate, and I'm sure you can all agree with me, was able to integrate my educational, personal, and professional lives in a way that created this premier learning environment, which for me just so happened to be the Department of Consumer Affairs in downtown Los Angeles. Now the first day I woke up extremely early, not knowing what to expect from the monster that is the Los Angeles freeway system. I set my GPS to the corner of Temple and Grand in downtown Los Angeles, and what popped out seemed to be more like sports statistics than directions. The 605 to the 60 to the 101 to the 110 in 18.5 miles. So, surprised by the gibberish that spewed out of my GPS, I headed out and took what would be the first of daily hour-and-a-half drives into downtown LA. However, every day was worth the trek because of the great things I was able to do at the department. Now, my duties as an intern could be broken down into two sections. There was consumer counseling and mediation. In consumer counseling, I was tasked to inform those who called into the department's helpline of what laws were on the books regarding their inquiry and providing them with the resources to help them further, such as the number for legal aid or the health department. Calls ran the gamut from landlord-tenant questions to consumer electronics, the digital television transition, to credit card collections. So there was a vast menagerie of topics that were always in play. The second part of my duties was focused in dispute settlement, specifically mediation. In that capacity, I was given cases to follow up on, get both sides of the story of a given dispute, and then act as a neutral third party in order to come to an agreeable outcome, which, if the parties allowed for it, could be legally binding. And it was nice for me, considering that I'm pre-law. So when I started the department, I was sent through this extremely comprehensive training process that really left no stone unturned. Now, once the training was completed, I was in the midst of it all. However, I wasn't as nervous as one might expect, considering just jumping right into this. The staff and administrators were so welcoming and open to answering any question at any time. I was really surprised to have a government organization be so inviting, and even those who weren't, and making those who weren't even on the payroll feel as if their input was just as important as an administrator's. Over time, over a very short time I might add, my comfort level was extremely high, and it had this perfect balance of professionalism and friendliness. For example, my supervisor in mediation, Jackie Mizrahi, helped me and advised me with a case that I had, and it wasn't really authoritarian, but it was a friend and fellow colleague. And because of that type of a relationship, I felt I was more akin to ask questions. And by extension, I didn't have to learn entirely by trial and error, but through close study and inquisitive observation. My supervisor, Esperanza Hernandez, told me early on that the staff there was more like an extended family than just another office space. And her words certainly held true. The environment was made so comfortable and was littered with positive reinforcement, which made it a really rich soil to develop and learn. And this is the type of environment that I recommend for any student, especially if they're trying to get into government, because it really breaks that paradigm of that stuffy office environment that most people often attribute to government work. There's a few lessons that I took from here. A major one was realism. It's always great to aspire to high goals, but in this case I had to realize that I wasn't going to change the world just because I was on the case, and that every case wasn't going to be solved just because I did it. It sounds pessimistic, yes, but in reality it was a great tool to be effective, and not to be disappointed when things came out, things went out of your control and something you couldn't change. It really didn't make you feel like you didn't do anything. People my age come out of college, we all come out bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, thinking we're going to move mountains, and we become so ambitious that we end up being doomed to failure. So getting in touch with the real world and dealing with clients that at times weren't always the most likable or approachable, it gave me a far more solid and realistic base to stand on and grow from there. Now, speaking of growth, the development over this past summer of certain skills had been paramount to the success that I had in the position. In my case, I was able to hone the skill of taking charge in a room. Now, for those of you who know me, that doesn't seem like that would be much of a problem. However, when one tries to do this with two 65-year-old men who have been suing each other back and forth and at your wits' end, it's a whole new ballgame, folks. When someone calls for instance, when someone calls you wanting to know how to sue a Chrysler dealership because the Chryslers have mind control devices on them and you have to wear tinfoil on your head in order to drive the car. I'm not kidding, this was a real case. Or someone called us wanting to know how to stop a landlord who's leaving voodoo dolls in front of their door and burning ox blood in front of them in the middle of the night. Or for instance, a tour guide agency, this couple wanted to sue a tour guide agency because the tour guide was bad and they didn't teach them how to play craps. So they wanted a very small, measly amount of $200,000. This is the type of stuff that you have to work with the Department of Consumer Affairs, and unfortunately you can't just tell them they're insane. Now the list goes on, but that was the whole fun of it though. Minus the fact that I just realized how crazy people in Los Angeles are. Now, I didn't do it alone though. I was in luck. Unfortunately, he's not here, but Marvin Cano was also with me, a fellow poet who's a sophomore. Now, we took the liberty to discover Los Angeles in this case, and oftentimes the craziness wasn't too far to find. For instance, everything you heard this summer was, for instance, Chris Brown's trial. We were able to sneak in through the side and actually watch the proceedings. We were able to be there when Michael Jackson's custody trial was going on, because you have to realize the department's right here and the Superior Court is right there. So every day I would be driving into work and you would see, you know, ABC News, oh this, I'm like, oh for God's sake, what did Chris Brown do now? And so I'm driving in there, and so it was really funny. Discovering places like Chinatown and Valero Street, it only sweetened the deal, and it's nice when you're right next to Mocha, and you know, not a lot of people can go take their lunch breaks and go look at Jackson Pollock's for lunch. That was a lot of fun. But in order to wrap everything up, because I know I'm so over time, but it was a fantastic experience, especially when you're working with something in the government, and I know some of us were working for NGOs and working here in something that you would think would be so menial. But it really wasn't. You really just discover how valuable some of these smaller organizations within government are, and how much people really are suffering right now, especially in these economic times. It really is a reality check. So to make a long story short, which is probably too late by now, I'd really like to say I am deeply honored by having taken part in this program, and I really do thank all those who made this possible. Thank you very much.
My name's Andrew Kim. I am a sophomore. My major is psychology. Going to go on to business administration though. And I entered at the Committee for Human Rights in North Korea in Washington, D.C. It wasn't really the type of internship I expected myself to be in. I more or less actually just kind of took it because I had a connection with the corporation. But I mean, actually it was like an amazing experience, and it really changed my perspective about like viewing the world globally. It really expanded my horizons, but I decided just to let you guys know a little bit about North Korea, because one of the main things I learned was that nobody knows anything. So first of all, during my internship I learned a lot of strange things about North Korea. Like first of all, Kim Jong-il, the current leader of North Korea, he has the single largest DVD collection in the world. He loves movies. His favorite movie is The Karate Kid, and he actually kidnapped one of the makers of The Karate Kid because he loved the movie so much. Kim Jong-il is also the largest single consumer of Hennessy, the alcoholic beverage. Kim Jong-il also owns an iPhone, but I don't think he knows how to use it, but he has it. North Korea recently opened its first fast food restaurant. It's a burger place. It actually looks exactly like McDonald's, just it's communist. But aside from that, you also learn some really terrible things about North Korea. Like, first of all, there's absolutely no freedom at all. No press, anything. And a result of that is there's 6 confirmed gulags. A gulag is a political prisoner camp. This is mainly where I was focused on researching and also writing reports on these gulags. There are about 300,000 people who already died in these gulags, and you can get sent for anything between sitting on a picture of Kim Jong-il on, like, if there's a picture of a newspaper on the floor and you sit on it, you can get sent to a gulag for that. If you're drunk one night, sing a South Korean song, you can get sent to a gulag for that. And there's only one gulag in the world. I think it's gulag number 4. It's the only one where people actually escape from. And I actually met a survivor. This is basically probably the most important part of my internship. I actually met 2 North Korean defectors. The first one was Mr. Kim. He was a high-ranking North Korean official. Basically, he foresaw the fall of North Korea's regime and decided to run away with his family. And I actually was in charge of helping him buy a map for New York. He was going to go visit New York, and I was walking with him and I had a really interesting discussion. First of all, he thought it was surprising that in America you're not required to go to the army. In North Korea it's mandatory. I think for 13 years you have to go to the army. And he just couldn't believe it. He was like, America is such a great place. Why don't people want to go fight? Like, North Korea, we hate it, but we have to do it anyways. Also, North Koreans love badminton and soccer. If you don't know, North Korea is actually going to play in the the World Cup for the tournament, and they're going to face off against South Korea. And probably the funniest part was when we went to the map store and he was trying to buy like this enormous map, very detailed map of all the United States to get to New York. I was like, why do you need that? And then I thought about it, and North Korea is probably the same size as the state of Massachusetts. So for him to get a whole country map makes sense, but for us, the map is so huge, it just doesn't make any sense. And so I actually had to like buy like this small pop-up map, and he was like, oh, this is amazing, I don't know, it was really interesting with him. I met another woman after that. We held a press conference selling basically a report called Lives for Sale of women who attempted to flee from North Korea. And basically it tells their story. This one woman, all she wanted to do was go to China, make some money, and come back. She was tricked by a broker. He sold her as a wife, basically, a slave wife. This is very common. She escaped from that. It was very abusive, so she ran away. She was caught by the Chinese government. Basically, China does not offer refugee status for North Koreans. They actually usually have to run all the way to Mongolia. But she was caught, sent to a gulag, tortured. Actually, her story is amazing. I don't really want to go into it because it's actually really messed up, but just the torture that they do. She said she saw a pregnant woman who got pregnant in China, so they made two men stand on top of her abdomen, and they continuously pressed on her until the baby died. It's really moving, her story. I had to translate for our DVD that we were sending out for people to see who weren't able to make it. I had to translate all that, and it was really difficult that whole time. By the way, I did mostly media services. She was eventually saved by her son. Her son managed to get to South Korea and hired someone to bring her over, and that's how she was able to come for our press conference and make that speech when we released Lives for Sale. But aside from all that, I guess I'll just wrap it up with what I actually did. My main job was to number one, media services, so translating all that. Also editing photographs, anything like that we needed. I had access to the Senate building and the House of Representatives buildings. I went there on multiple occasions to deliver various reports that our organization releases. That's what Committee for Human Rights in North Korea does. We release reports about North Korea to inform the government. The UN quotes us. President Obama quoted us. Hillary Clinton quoted us. Really with the foreign affairs committees of the Senate and House of Representatives. The main thing I learned about my internship was how to beg for money, because it's a non-profit organization, so basically almost every single day we had to like beg for money. So yeah, we basically had to make a huge donor list and actually write up these letters and then send them out to all these donors, and we got checks from $50 to $250,000. So it really taught me how to get money with nothing. But yeah, it was overall like an amazing experience. I really viewed the world differently because of it, because of these stories of these defectors, of these survivors, and I think I went over the time limit. I'm sorry, but yeah, I just wanted to say that. So thank you all.
Hi, my name is Whittier, and I'm a sophomore this year, and I'm a biology major and a chemistry minor, and I plan on going to med school, so I'm pre-med. And over the summer, I did an internship at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, which is a sort of famous hospital down in West Hollywood or Los Angeles, I guess. And I was able to work with my primary investigator, who is doing research for on the disease called polycystic ovary syndrome, which I had never heard of ever, but now I hear about it all the time, which I don't know if it's a coincidence or what, but so what I had to do was basically gather all the data that the PhDs and MDs collected, and I had to research on what they found, and then on, I don't know, it's like PubMed, so I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with that, but it's a collection of scientific journals and stuff, and I had to collect them all and then put them in, like, write papers and submit them, and then they would edit them and hopefully get published. So I was able to help with that, and because I was very young, I was the youngest I think they had, because everyone else they had were seniors and grad students, and I was the only freshman that they took. So I wasn't really able to be too hands-on with the experiments because I didn't have much experience, but I was able to watch and give feedback and help with simple things like pipetting and stuff. But overall, I think it was a great experience. I learned a lot. I learned how to do a lot of things that I guess would help with my major and my future career plans. And in the beginning, I wasn't very happy because I wasn't really doing anything. Everyone else got to do stuff. But in the end, I realized it was because I was so young and they were just afraid that I would, because we had actual human adipose tissue, which is fat, and it wasn't very abundant, so they had to be very careful with it. So I was just able to watch, but then in the end, I realized why, and I was so grateful for the opportunity, and I really enjoyed it. And in the end, actually, I got asked to come back next year, or this summer, and I'm considering it, and hopefully I'll be able to do more hands-on with more experience, and yeah, that's it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I actually held 2 internships over the summer. They're both in Whittier. One of them was How House, which is sober health for financially dependent adult men, and the other one, which I committed more time to and I enjoyed much more, was Bridget Faith, which is a home for girls coming out of foster care, but also girls coming out of homelessness and girls coming, out of drug addiction, and girls who don't know how to live in a home with their family. And so they provide a cigarette family for them to live in, and how to live with other people, because most of these girls have never had a family. And I worked really closely with the executive director, and I would have asked her to come today, but she's actually busy. And I did a lot of work for them, and I wasn't really sure what I was going to do there. The first day I filed papers, and I was like, this is kind of boring. Am I really going to do this all summer? And I was kind of, first day, a little discouraged, and then things picked up, and she started asking me for my opinion. I'm like, you really want my opinion? Like, I literally sat across from her desk every summer, like every day of the summer I was there. And she asked for my opinion, she asked what I thought, she asked for ideas, she asked me to do, simple things like, oh, I need you to email these people and say thank you, or I need you to come up with a poster for this coming sale. I need you to tell me, how do I increase sales at our thrift shop, which is one of the major fundraising. And so I got really close to her, I got really close to the mission statement of Bridget Faith. I got really close, I don't know, I felt really committed to it. And come June, she asked me to attend the board of directors meeting, and I felt honored, and I said yes, I'd love to attend. and they actually voted me on. So I've been a board director for 2 months, maybe 3 months now. And just last August we had our big retreat, which we planned the entire year, and it was long 9 hours that we planned the entire year. And so I feel, I don't know, it's what a big experience. I think that I'm 19 and I'm, board member for a nonprofit organization. I don't know, I'm so shocked. I don't know, I'm sorry, I don't know what to say. I don't know, I'm really happy I have the opportunity, and I love Carol. She became more than a boss, she became my friend, and I still talk to her on a weekly basis. And I think the most thing I'm proud of is I'm trying to put up a mentoring and coaching program for the girls who are in residence and Bridge of Faith homes. Pretty much, hopefully get Whittier College students to mentor them, teach them success skills, time management skills, goal setting, and things like that. So that's in progress for now. Maybe I'll ask you to become a volunteer next semester.